Can I call Breath of the Wild revolutionary? It certainly inspired other games, so, like, I guess. It's just weird to call it revolutionary when it was inspired by, like, the first game in the Zelda series, however many years ago. Sorry, this is a weird start to a video. Whatever, point is, I really like Breath of the Wild. I'll admit it took me ages to get to it. I played it in 2019, but I was able to binge the game for ages in a pretty depressing time in my life, so it worked out. I also got to play it blind with the first major graphics update with HD textures and whatnot, so that was a plus. You can't tell, but I'm winking right now. Anyway, Breath of the Wild gets a lot of stuff way right, but as the first of a no doubt long line of games in, let's say, a pseudo new genre within open worlds, it just oozes room for improvement and further revolutionizing. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna go wild and experiment and try to come up with like some out there additions. I'm not gonna be doing anything obvious like adding back in true dungeons or doing anything that requires like extra visual design, as I feel like the only reason that wasn't included was because of scope. Oh hey, this looks cool. I wanna see this place up close. Alright, I still want to see what this looks like up close. Also, I won't really be doing any problem fixing except for durability. But if you want a thread to tie these ideas, my main goal is to get the most out of the world that already exists by adding mechanics and things that can be placed in the world that you will be forced to interact with differently depending on its surroundings, location, and your items. I got a lot of playtime out of Breath of the Wild, but I felt like I started to get bored before I actually ran out of content. I felt like I frequently ran into mechanics that I felt like I never had any excuse to use, and found things that felt placed in the world in a way that mechanically played out no different than the last time I found it placed in the world. Basically, I'm just adding mechanics that reinforce the spirit of the game. You know, conquer the wild, become one with nature. Using your tools and your wits, you can go anywhere, do anything. Water. Number 1, let's talk fast travel. Fast travel is really interesting to me as like a game design problem, because it's always seen as a problem rather than an opportunity to create something fun. What I mean is, having to boringly backtrack through areas to get to your actual goal is typically just a side effect of designing a game with an open world, and because of that, designers often try to cut down the boring part as efficiently as possible with like menu buttons or warp points, rather than try to use the problem to create something fun. Because that's the ultimate goal of a game, right? Is to entertain. So yes, you could remove the boring parts, but you could also just make the boring parts fun. This is why I love fast travel in Earthbound. It works like most games. It allows you to quickly travel to places you've already been to, but there's a mechanical trick to it. When you activate it, your resident group of 10-year-olds strap on some running shoes and fuck up Usain Bolt's world record. You start to run faster and faster, and once you get to a certain speed for a certain amount of time, you teleport. But if you hit something and your momentum stops, you fail. It creates a fun little puzzle to it where, in order to fast travel, you have to think about your surroundings in a new way. It's pretty cool and has a fun visual flair to fast travel, but it's not too deep. It basically means you have to find a straight area, and maybe in certain areas you'll have to find the line that needs the fewest right-hand turns. But this idea is destined for Breath of the Wild, because the game not only has half a dozen ways to build up speed that are reliant on where you are and what you have at your disposal, but also the game is so open that you're rarely ever fast traveling to and from the same place from the same angle. So if you change this to require your own way to build up speed, and also require you to build up speed in the direction where you're going, it creates an amazing opportunity for a dynamic puzzle/challenge that changes each time you fast travel. So here's how it works. Dump all the warping in the bin, that shit's useless. I say as I use it to quickly get footage for this video. So you can fast travel from anywhere, but you have to select warp gates to travel to. Warp gates are just special circles on the ground that you can find in the world that get added to your map when you find them. When you select one to fast travel to, you must then go a certain speed for a certain amount of time in the direction of that warp circle on the map in order to warp there. How far you have to go and how fast you have to go is dependent on how far away it is. This means every time you fast travel, you're given a unique challenge each time. You might find yourself on a hill that you can easily shield surf down, but other times there will be different obstacles or monsters. Sometimes there won't be a hill, and the best you'll have is an incredibly treacherous cliff path down. Perhaps you'll be in a deep valley forest with no way to build up speed, but there's a stone talus who can smack you or throw you to start your momentum going to start maybe shield surfing. This isn't actually possible in the game, but it could be. In the same vein, changing weather could also play a part in this. Rain already makes it easier to shield surf. What if there was a randomized wind direction that makes you move faster but only from a certain angle? That could be great too. Sometimes you'll have to weigh up whether it's worth climbing something just to get the speed up. Maybe there's grass you can set fire to get yourself up, or maybe the cliff you're intending to glide off has too many obstacles, or you have to take out some enemies first. Maybe the small hill you found won't give you enough speed before you hit the bottom, but there's grass to set fire to that you can transition into a parachute jump to get that little little bit of extra movement. Maybe there'll even be moments where you're conveniently near a really good shield surfing spot when you want to go to the other side of the map, so it's totally worth climbing just to cover that huge distance. What's more, when you come out of the warp, you maintain your momentum, so you may also have to account for the direction you're going to come out of the portal, as designers can have a lot of fun placing some gates on cliff sides or over lava. Some portals may require absolute precision and timing as to not overshoot, while others may only be dangerous coming in from certain angles. It might even be necessary to overshoot completely to cross large gaps. To be fair, this is cheapened a little by the whole tree trick, which is both fast and only requires a tree, but that's also a very precise manipulation of the game that I don't think most players would learn in their first playthrough, or even necessarily want to use if there's just like a hill you can shield surf down. Personally, I didn't use it at all, it's too fiddly for me, but if you know how to do it, it does allow you to cross the map really easily, where others might only require a couple of jumps. Plus, it's really fun. Or at least it looks it. But regardless, the conclusion is every time you fast travel, the problem will be different based on your position, your goal, and the tools at your disposal. Idea 2, challenge gates. One of the more weird issues I noticed playing through Breath of the Wild is that there was almost a bit too much freedom. That sounds bad. I don't intend to restrict the player on what they can and can't do. That's against this game's design. Let me explain. One of the positives of linear level design is that you can really make this concise, complex challenge because you know exactly where the player is coming from. But in Breath of the Wild, you can come into an objective from any angle, so sometimes it created these moments for me where I'd climb up a mountain or something and come up behind or above the back of like a carefully designed gauntlet of enemies that was clearly more interesting to fight from one direction, and I'm like, well, that looked fun, I wish I did that. I just climbed a boring mountain for 5 minutes and now I can just jump the backline and clear this easy. Or sometimes worse, I've already done it and then I've only just now noticed the challenge. Because like, I'm not fighting the enemies for the random sword or rupee or whatever in the chest, I'm really doing it for an interesting combat experience. But it also feels equally jank to go around just to fight it from the other side to give myself a challenge. Believe me, I tried, but giving myself the challenge always feels weird because like, if I win, I don't feel accomplished because I made it, so I'm biased to make it easy on me. And like, if I lose, I'm like, well, I don't even know if I was supposed to be able to beat it anyway. Knowing the game's mechanics, maybe they intended me to circumvent it. It's like loading up Super Mario Bros. And it's actually Mario Maker, and it's like, the only levels you can try now are the ones that you make yourself. It's just not the same, you know? There's also the thing that you can do so many cool things in this game. If you look at YouTubers like Pecco, the skill ceiling for this game is insane, but the game never challenges you to do this stuff, and unless I self-impose the rules on myself, I'd end up falling into 1 or 2 strategies for every camp and every enemy, and I started to get bored. So next idea, Torii gates. So in Japan, you can find these things called torii gates. They're like kind of placed all over the place and look really cool and spiritual and mark the location of sacred places or whatever. This sounds super ignorant. Whatever. They have a nice aesthetic and they're the things you can find in Kakariko Village, so they're not out of place. I mean, not any more than anything else. This game always felt very pro-environment and Ghibli-esque in its aesthetic right up until you chuck a high-tech future bomb at a chicken, but whatever. What I suggest is you place these torii gates all over the world, particularly in front of enemy camps and anything you want to make more of a linear challenge out of. If you walk around the gate and fight everything, it plays out like normal, but if you go through the gate, it creates a cone on the map that originates from the gate. You cannot go outside the boundaries without cancelling the challenge. We'll talk about potential rewards for doing this in a minute as I fill out the video, but just imagine that these challenges are just there for the sake of it, with a counter of how many torii gates you've completed, just like the Korok seeds. Complete the gate by killing the monsters and you cleanse the sacred area, just to go along with the torii gate theme. So fairly simple, it's a gate that allows you to challenge the player without forcing them to fight camps in any specific way. So basically, it's Eventide Island. I love Eventide Island. It's one of the few parts in the game where I felt a real challenge that wasn't just difficult, but actually forced me to vary and experiment with strategy like I was at the start of the game, because of course, it took away my stuff. Even took my clothes too. Why did you take my clothes, Korguchede? Getting a bit lonely in that box, are you? Anyway, let's have more of this. Eventide Island, I meant not old men sucking lick stick. By using torii gates instead, you don't have to make a ton of these islands. A lot of these places in the world already have interesting level design. You're just never challenged with it. For this reason, I'd recommend 3 different types of torii gates. Directional gates that simply restrict your approach angle, special gates that have special restrictions and challenges like the removal on Eventide Island, and responsive gates that recognize what weapons and items you use the most frequently and ban you from it. I get a lot of people probably feel uncomfortable with a word like restriction in Breath of the Wild, but it's hardly any different from Korok puzzles. You don't have to do them, and the way you approach the challenge is limited only by the objective. Put the rock through the hole or shoot the targets is is, if anything, more restricting than kill the enemies but only from this angle, or without your current items, or without touching the ground more than once, or without alerting the watchtowers. There's still flexibility, but it's limited enough that you can't do the same thing for every camp. So yeah, basically same idea as before. Here's just another thing that you can pepper across the world to help each area feel different and present you with different problems. Challenge gates are relatively simple and don't require new one-off art or programming. It's something you can use to get the most out of your enemy placement across the world. You can even have multiple challenge gates per enemy group. Idea 3. Dueling Swords. Dude, did you ever notice that the Lionels have like a codpiece like here on the front part of the horse rather than the back? Is that just a big flopping human penis on the chest of this horse body? Sorry, this is only figuratively about dueling swords. Alright, this is a hard one, but let's talk durability. Your weapon breaks after too much use. Always. This has been a controversial mechanic that's really split people. Personally, I'm pro durability, as you can guess from a lot of this video. I like things that force me to mix up my style and present me with new problems that require new solutions. So forcing me to switch my weapons mid-combat and build strategies around this revolving door of items was fun and challenging. But I think I understand the other side, which to be fair is fairly straightforward. I like this weapon, I want to keep using it, why are you taking away from me the thing that I enjoy? That's literally what video games are for, what the fuck? The problem is, making both these players happy is hard. I hear many say, oh, just you need the durability to be longer, but I think that's a half measure. You just made one group happier at the expense of the other. Suddenly I'm forced to switch less, so it's less fun for me, and the players who want to use a weapon are still forced to switch eventually. You haven't improved the design overall, you've just made it better for one player at the expense of another. At the same time, the game isn't built to have no durability at all anyway, because the pro durability players are challenge focused. If you give players the option to use one weapon that doesn't break, it suddenly becomes the superior option and there's no reason to not use the other one. So here's what I landed on. There are two types of weapons you can get. Weapons that lose durability from any use like normal, and weapons that only use durability if you make mistakes. So if you hit your weapon on an enemy, the weapon doesn't take damage, but if you have your weapon out and you hit terrain, a block, or you get hit by an explosion or get thrown, then your weapon takes damage. And also, perhaps a small chance of it getting damaged when you get hit just in general. You also have far less slots for these new weapons, and they're much rarer to find, ensuring that you will run out of them if you try to use them as recklessly as your normal weapons. This means they're not superior to normal weapons in practice, but if you like a particular weapon, you can theoretically use it forever. You just need to be good with it, which I think leans into this playstyle perfectly. When I think about games I played like Dark Souls that don't force you to switch weapons, I find myself finding a weapon that I like and sticking to it. But not just because I like the playstyle, it becomes an element of self-expression in the same way clothes do. The weapon I use is half of my identity in the game, and for that reason I also pride myself in being good with it and mastering it. So a mechanic like this feels perfectly aligned with this playstyle because it encourages you to perfect your mastery with a blade, not just for your own pride, but also to protect your identity. It's for this reason I call these dueling weapons, and I'd like to do a bit more with it to accentuate this element. For starters, you can only use either your dueling weapons or normal weapons, but if you have access to your horse, you can swap them out. The logic being, you can't carry around a whole arsenal and expect them not to clatter around and get damaged. Your dueling weapon requires care and love, so you can only hold it by itself. Naturally, how many dueling weapons you can hold at once can be upgraded a little bit over time, with the Master Sword getting its own slot because it's now a dueling weapon. See, it works much better as a dueling weapon than a recharge weapon because now you have to Master Sword. Your dueling weapon of choice is also displayed on your horse to reinforce your choice of identity, even if you're not using normal weapons at the time, as to not risk your precious dueling weapon. This is also why it would be good if all weapons now displayed how damaged they are, and went from shiny to dull, to dirty to notched, and rusting. These dueling weapons should be for most players their pride and joy that they're scared of damaging even a little bit. Now while you can use your dueling weapon anywhere, fights with lots of enemies and outside factors are messy, and all but the most daring players will avoid risking them here. Where dueling swords will get the best use are in duels. Duels are special one-on-one fights you can initiate by talking to special NPCs, honor-bound swordsmen who want clean fights with clean, well-kept weapons in dramatic open fields or on the peaks of mountains. They'll only fight you if you use a dueling weapon, and the more of them you fight, the more you'll be recognized as the person who fights with the weapon you use. It's the boy who wields the eightfold blade, or the legendary wielder of the stick. Yeah, you can find a dueling variant of a tree branch. These fights are designed to help reinforce your identity, but really get the most out of Breath of the Wild's dramatic scenery. Got a shallow pool of water that edges a waterfall high on a cliff? Have a dramatic duel there. What about a lone duelist in the middle of the snow, obscured and silhouetted by the blizzard? A beach at sunset? Have a duelist appear at a specific time. Dramatic bridge? Have a duel to cross it. Thunderstorm? That could be fun. Just stick a single platform in the middle of a ravine to have a duel. How do you get there? I don't know, but it makes a cool visual for a fight. I think you'd have to give the horse a lot more flexibility in where it can be called from to switch your gear out without a ton of backtracking. It's kind of weird that they let you summon the horse from anywhere in the open world in the previous games, but then they increased the map size by like 3,000% and they're like, stop! You're using the horse too much, we have to restrict it. But I think it works fine if calling the horse has like a cooldown, ensuring that there are still times where you aren't using the horse just because you can, and that you only call it to get the most out of it. With this requirement to switch out weapons, I think the nature of some of these places you can find duelists in mean it could create tension, as you have to find a way to carefully take your dueling gear up a mountain or through difficult terrain and monsters to arrive at the fight with your weapon unharmed. Alright, and now we've sorted that out, we now have a ton of potential rewards that we can fill the game with. Idea 4, rewards. So after a while, rewards felt kind of lackluster. You stopped needing item space with Korok seeds, and better weapons stopped feeling cool after the first couple of times. But now you can offer dueling weapons as rewards, and most players will have their mind set on a specific dueling weapon they'll want to look out for because they've no doubt used the non-dueling type at some point in the game. To get the most out of it, I'd also like to offer clues as rewards. Sometimes when you open a chest, it will place a dot on your map where the chest is and tell you what item it's a clue for. There are 4 for each item, and at the intersection of those points is the location of the item itself. With so many Torii gates, it's good to flesh out the rewards so it's not just mostly normal weapons and normal rewards, but it also means it doesn't hurt player flexibility either, because if you're clever, you might be able to skip a couple of points or a couple of Torii gates and make an estimated guess on where the reward might be. Other things you can offer is sword oil, that's very rare but will repair your dueling sword to its shiny state. It's typically a reward from duels to encourage risking your weapons though. You'd also want to have a place somewhere that will let you respawn or earn dueling swords back if you destroy them, so they're not gone from the world permanently. I'd personally have a small random chance on finding them on enemies too. Also, no, I don't know why enemy monster camps would or could have a treasure as precious as a delicate dueling sword like this. Hi, we're Bokoblins, welcome to our home. This is our living area / bomb storage. Idea 4, anchoring. Alright, let's finish off with a quick one. Movement in Breath of the Wild is super fun. Parachuting and shield surfing is fast and efficient, and it's satisfying to make use of gravity to such a dramatic effect. But naturally, there's no easy way to go up. Climbing isn't as fun. There's a bit of interest in climbing. When I don't have stamina, I found it fun to plan out my route by searching for outcroppings on the cliff to regain my stamina, but often there's not much else, and climbing itself is kinda slow. I don't mean to create like wall running or like a drill or something to clear mountains easy because it'd feel cheap and make the parachuting less satisfying, but something that requires more thought would be good. So here's what I suggest. When you shoot a certain type of arrow at a wall or throw a weapon, it won't explode, it'll stick to the wall. You can't get it back after it sticks, and it won't necessarily always stick either, but the more direct the angle is, the more likely it is to stick. Also, materials like dirt are easier than rock to stick to, and how close you are will also increase the chances, and the strength of the weapon or the bow is a factor as well. Throwing spears particularly are the best. Once you have an anchor, you can climb on top of it, but you also have a new tool, rope, that can be used to lasso your anchors and swing from them. This should make climbing not just more interesting, but faster and more fun. It doesn't make any cliff you don't have a good angle on a cinch to climb with this, because obviously the more you try to anchor up, the tougher the angle is. But if you see a tree or an outcropping jutting out from a cliff, you can stab your anchor vertically and use it to swing out to a better position. And there are a bunch of fun interactions that work because of this angle clause. Like if you see grass around, you can set it on fire and parachute up to get a better angle. Plus, mid-air bullet time means you can swing or glide into another mid-air position that allows you to reach something you can stand on with another mid-air anchor and rope lasso. Also, just for fun, every weapon has its own bounce level if you jump on it. Wooden spears in particular have the most bounce. See, it bounces out because it's a weaker weapon and has less anchor potential anyway, so you can't just fill your inventory with them. All of this would allow you to work the parachute into your climb strategy as you reposition for new anchors and generally give things much more flow. Also, it's limited by how many weapons and special arrows you have, so you're constantly weighing up whether it's worth it and creating something to use up swords in Breath of the Wild's late game where weapons don't feel like they matter as much. And there we go. Hopefully these additions not only seem fun by themselves, but once implemented, make it easy to fill out the world with them and provide an efficient way of making each place feel different and spark dynamic interactions from the player. Whether you're using anchor points to traverse a mountain without running into enemies so that you can save your weapon for an upcoming duel, or exploring as efficiently as possible by using teleportation circles you have available to plan out your route to revisit Torii gates you haven't completed to try to track down clues to get your favorite weapon as a dueling variant, I hope these additions inspire you. Hopefully to the dynamic possibilities, not inspire you to rip the ideas to shred. But hey, do me a favor, tell me your favorite and your least favorite. I like data. And if you like these ideas so much that you're angry they'll never be implemented, check out this video on why intellectual property is a god-awful concept and why abolishing it would give you everything you want and more. That took a turn. But no, seriously, check it out. That video has like a 96% like ratio. I guarantee you it's a lot more convincing than you realize. Okay. Ciao. The blue slide looks so cute with look at the googly eyes. Okay, well now it just looks like it's in pain.